Let's face it, sometimes the Bible feels really out of touch with modern society. And yet, the truth inside is still the truth. In this week's talk, we'll look at the gap between the Bible and culture and how you can navigate it better.
Let's be honest, sometimes Christianity feels a little bit out of step with the modern world. Has anybody else ever noticed that? As groovy as you feel following Jesus, sometimes it seems a little out of date, a little out of touch, a little out of phase with pop culture, kind of like my hairdo. How many of you guys had a hairdo kind of like this back in the day? Anybody? All right. You ought to post a picture. Hey, you want to see a real fro? Let me show you when it was authentic, right? Sometimes it feels a little bit out of phase with the world. Sometimes when people find out that you're a Christian, what did you do this weekend? I was baptized in water. What does that mean? Well, that means I decided to follow Jesus. Oh, you're one of those. Okay? Sometimes they get these ideas about you. Oh, well, wait, so you still think that gender is only two flavors? Yeah, okay. You still think that going and getting drunk is a bad idea? You still think that all of the animals actually fit on a boat and the world flooded and then they got off 2 by 2? You still think that the Cowboys are good? What do you think this is, 1995? Okay. Yes, Cowboys are still good. This is the year. I believe it. Sometimes it feels like there's a gap there. There's a gap between the Bible and American culture. And you feel that in part because you're like me. You want to fit in. You want to be accepted. You want to be part of the tribe. Nobody wants to feel like they're the odd one out and everybody kind of look at you weird. But in my mind, there's an even greater reason why that gap, it concerns me. It troubles me. It puzzles me on what to do, because there are people that I love, people that I'm related to, or people that I've grown close to as friends, and I want them to come to faith in Jesus. I want them to be saved. I want them to experience God in their lives the way that I have. And that gap presents a little bit of a challenge to get them from where they are today to where I hope that they are someday. How many of you guys, hands raised, how many would say there's somebody in my life that I want them to be saved? I hope that someday they will accept Jesus as Lord. Yeah, a lot of us. And the gap presents a little bit of a problem because there is one. It's undeniable. There is a gap between the Bible and pop culture. And if you raise your hand, you've probably had these moments, kind of like I have before, where I'm like, God, how do I convince them that Christianity is not weird? It's actually, normal. How do I convince them that I'm not crazy? Okay, that's slightly personal. But how do I convince them that they should do this? How can I bridge that gap? Today I want to talk to you about how to navigate that gap with God's help. And I want to talk to you about what to do about it and how you can better share your experience with your friends and family that haven't made a decision to serve the Lord. But before we talk about bridging the gap, I think it's really important that we understand the gap. So if you're taking notes, you want to write this down, or if you've got it on the Bible app on your phone, you can do that there too. That's good online as well. First thing is you need to understand why the gap is there in the first place. Okay? You need to understand why it's there in the first place, because we have this kind of assumption in church about why there's a gap. And sometimes I think that assumption, I think it's a little off base. Here's how it goes, okay? It usually is centered around this idea that this world is just getting darker and darker. This world is just constantly in moral decay. This America is not what it once was, and that's why there's a gap, because the world is getting darker and darker. And to be sure, you don't have to look far to see places where our society has diverged further from the values that God presents in the Bible. Okay, many of you guys were around when you prayed every day in school before you started teaching. Well, we don't want to do that anymore. Many of you guys remember Roe v. Wade. Many of you remember when the level of violence and sex in Hollywood would have been shocking to America. And now it's like, well, yawn, of course they have that. But we have this tendency, and this is me too, to so glaze the past and the good old days that we forget that sometimes the good old days had some issues too. I'll be the first one to tell you that, yes, the United States was largely founded by Christians, right? A lot of the founding fathers were believers. Did you know that a third of the founding fathers owned slaves and saw nothing wrong with it? A third of them. Well, they were Christians. Yeah. But, okay, some issues. Did you know that before Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany started rounding up Jews and gypsies and homosexuals and anyone else they didn't want and putting them in internment camps and gassing them to death, did you know that before they did that, back in the 1920s, they sent people to America to learn how we did eugenics and white supremacy because we were the best in the world at it? But you didn't know that. That is a long, dark, deep rabbit hole you can go down sometime. There have been problems. There have been issues throughout human history. It's not just an American thing. It's a human thing. And all of these are problems, but all of them are symptoms. And as you know, symptoms, you can treat the symptoms, but it's more important to get to the root cause. If you want to understand the gap between the Bible and culture, you need to go all the way back to the beginning to see the root cause. It's in the very first record of human interaction with God. And so God makes a man and a woman. He puts them in the Garden of Eden. He says that you've got this whole beautiful thing. You can eat anything in here you want. There's only one thing, only one rule. There's a tree in here that you must not eat from. It was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, sometimes we get that mixed up. It's the tree of good and evil. It's important. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He said, don't do that. You eat anything else, you'll be fine. And of course, as soon as Satan enters the picture, that's the first thing that he encourages these people, these first humans, our ancestors, to do. He said, doesn't that seem a little unfair? Why should God get to have all of the knowledge? If he loves you, doesn't he want you to have knowledge? Doesn't he want you to be able to decide what's good or bad, what's right or wrong? I think you should be able to decide for yourself. And they said, you know what? That's a good point. I think I should decide for myself what's healthy and what's unhealthy, what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what should be done and what should not be done. Look at the way that he phrases it. Genesis 3:5. He says, God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you'll be like God. Do we have that? We might not. That's okay. Knowing the difference between good and evil. And they did, and sin enters the world, and the foundation of sin in the world is the rejection of God's definition of right and wrong, and it's us saying, no, I want to decide. I don't want somebody to tell me if what I do is wrong. I don't want to feel bad about it if I do it. I ought to be able to figure it out for myself. And we have all of these ways where that comes into our culture, and it's not just American culture, it's every culture around the world. Okay, don't tell me that I can't do what I want. If I'm not hurting anybody, it should be okay. Don't yuck my yum. Go, Pack, go. All of these things that we say, I slit that in and nobody even noticed. Doom, doom, bop, do, do, dum. Go, Pack, go. Okay, all of these things that are all centered around the same idea. I shouldn't have to do what some God out there wants. I should just be able to chart my own course, do whatever I want. And because of that, write this down in your notes, the greatest sin in secular culture is to deny yourself. That's the greatest wrong. The idea is to be true to yourself. So to deny yourself, well, don't force me to do that. I should make up my own way, make up my own mind. Now, if you were one of those who were baptized, if you grew up in church or you've been serving the Lord with your life, there's probably something that immediately comes to your mind that you say, well, that might be a problem. Okay? If the greatest sin in secular culture is to deny myself, that's a bit of an issue because that's a foundational part of Christianity. Jesus said it this way in Luke chapter 9. He said, whoever wants to be my disciples must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. He says, if you want to be part of my team, if you want to be saved, it requires not only accepting Jesus as Savior, but accepting him as Lord. It requires me putting myself second and saying, God, if you say that this is right and this is wrong, I'll go by your definition instead of mine. If you say I should treat people this way instead of this way, I will defer to your definition instead of mine. It's a foundational thing. And that foundational piece in the gap is there, whether it's a modern society in a gap or an ancient society in a gap. I've got curly hair right in my face. There we go. Okay. It's always been there. It's always been there. If you look back in slices of history, it's kind of the same thing, okay? North America, 1700s. We don't want them engines on our land. There ain't enough to go around. They need to find somewhere else to live. 1800s. We don't want them Negroes on our land. There ain't enough to go around. They need to find somewhere else to live. 2026. We don't want them immigrants on our land. There ain't enough to go around. They need to find somewhere else to go. It's the same core problem of me saying, I want what's mine. Everybody else can go sit on it, Potsy. Okay? I want what's mine. And that foundational gap has always been there. It's not new. It was there when the Bible was written. See, write this down in your notes because this is important to understand how you can reach your friends who don't know Jesus. If I want to bridge that gap, I need to understand that authentic Christianity will always run contrary to popular culture. Because Christianity forces me to put myself second and defer to God's definitions of right and wrong. It forces me to put myself second, to put my family first. It forces me to serve those even if they're not good to me. It's a core foundational gap, and because of that, it will always be there. And that creates a little bit of a challenge here today, because the guy on the stage, he just said, all right, there's a problem. How am I going to convince my friends and family that Christianity is not weird? How am I going to bridge the gap if Chris says the gap will always be there? How then do I convince them that it's not weird? Okay, you ready? That's the neat part. You don't. You don't convince them that it's not weird, because as long as you are actually living a life with God first, you are always going to seem weird if you're surrounded by people who live me first. It will always be weird. The purpose then, the point of what we need to do as Christians is not to convince them that Christianity is normal or popular or trendy or it fits in. What we should do instead is to convince them that it's healthy and that it's actually better than the living for me first. And in order to do that, there has to be a gap. There has to be some difference. There has to be a little bit of contrast. Now, let me be careful here. The difference in that gap is based around values. I believe very, very firmly that Christians should be really good at communicating the gospel in whatever way that culture understands. Okay? That's why we have tap to give stuff in the giving buckets instead of our 1970s brass ones. Okay? Because I want to use whatever way that I can to communicate God's values, but those values will always run against the grain of culture. And they're supposed to. So how then, Chris, can I convince them that they ought to be saved? The absolute best way that you can, write this down, is to be a walking product demo. To use your life as a case study in Christianity. to use your life to say, this is what it would look like if someone took this old book and the values and actually imported them into 2026. That's what it would look like. Because that dynamic is very, very powerful. Where did I put my, I left my water down here. The dynamic is very powerful. We like reviews. How many of you guys buy stuff on Amazon? Any Amazon shoppers? Who am I kidding? It's probably everybody, okay? All the time. So you probably have encountered this like I did actually recently. You have this idea in your head about a product that would make life better. And it's kind of a niche market deal, but you look on Amazon and sure enough, they make one that fits your 12-year-old car. Yes, okay? And the description is good, and the price is good. Everything is good except there are no reviews at all. Oh, no. Okay, now it's risky. Now I don't even know if I want it. Why? Because I need to see the reviews before I buy stuff. If it's got 3.5 stars, I'm just moving on. Okay, right? It's got to have 4.5. And if I go to look at the 4.5 and all of them look like the same AI bot wrote them, I'm also moving on. Okay, we give great value to personal experience. Amazon leverages it, but it's not something new. Some of you guys remember long before the internet was a thing and word of mouth was the best way to advertise a product. If someone that you know said, man, I tried that new steak restaurant. It's awesome. You got to go. Now I want to go. It's powerful. Researchers have identified this process in your brain. They call them mirror neurons. That's a hard one to say. Mirror neurons. Sounds like okay? Mirror neurons. Okay? Mirror neurons. And here's how that works. When you hear somebody else's experience, and let's say there were reviews, when you go on and this person says, I put these new faux leather seats on my car and it immediately looked like an awesome brand new vehicle and my wife now thinks I'm sexy. Okay, I want that. Here's what happens. Your mind in the background runs a simulation where you take their experience and you paste it onto your life. And if it's a good simulation, you think, maybe that's something I ought to do. If you're looking at bicycle tires and somebody says, I thought these tires were good, and the first time I went off-roading on my bike, the thing blew out and I flipped over and I broke my shin, your mind visualizes you flipping over the handlebars and breaking your shin and how much it hurts, and you're like, nah, I'm good. Yeah, I don't think I even want that as a hobby anymore. Hey, we give great value to testimonials. More than saying to your friends, I need to convince you that God is real. An even more way to convince them is by you living with a real God in your life and them seeing how it affects your life. Them seeing the difference. It matters an awful lot. Bible says this, 1 Peter 2, starting in verse 9. Let's put that up on the screens. He says, God has brought you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Okay? Notice the contrast terms when we're talking about this dynamic. Okay? That's the gap. He said, you used to live for yourselves. You were in darkness, and God reached into that dark place and called you out and brought you into his marvelous light. And now that you've been brought into light, your job is to tell all the wonderful things that he has done. That's how you share the good news. By telling people and by showing them and by putting that into practice. And those things are powerful. Okay, imagine that your friend tells you about this new trending influencer on TikTok who has an amazing hair growth serum. You just slather this stuff on your head and it just instantly you grow Uncle Jesse from Full House hair. I mean, the good stuff. Have mercy, right? You've got that. You just, like 3 easy payments of $79.99. We'll give you the serum. You rub it on your head, right? Beautiful hair. And you think, man, that sounds awesome. My hair's getting a little thinner, right? And I'd like to get out ahead of this stuff. And so you go to check out this TikTok influencer. And this guy on the screen says, I believe in this product. I use it all the time. My hair is great. You should buy it. Now, imagine that you go to watch the video, and instead of the hair growth guy looking like this, he looks like this. How motivated are you to buy hair growth serum from the guy who has no hair? He just slathers it on. Look at this in real time. You can see it sprouting. And you're like, it's not sprouting, man. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. I'm not going to give any credence to it because he says that it's working, but I can clearly see that it's not. He looks just like me with no hair, except at least I still have my money, and he's trying to take it from me. And if you saw a guy that looked like this selling hair growth serum, you would come to one of a few conclusions. Either he's crazy or delusional, or he's a scam artist, he's a crook, and he's trying to get my money out of me. And in fairness, doesn't that kind of seem similar to the criticisms that some people have about Christianity? Yeah. They're delusional. They're fooling themselves. They're just trying to hope in something, or they're just after my time. They're just after my money. They're just trying to control me. Clearly, it doesn't work because I can see it in their lives. Can I tell you, I believe every culture has this problem, but I see today's America, and we are surrounded by bald people selling hair growth serum. We're surrounded by Christians who promote Christianity, and yet I don't see it in their lives. And maybe you know people like this. Maybe you've been somebody like this. You say, I go to church. That's great. But you talk just as harshly to your wife as your friend who goes to the bar every Sunday. Shouldn't it make a difference in how you treat people? I go to church. That's great. But you are just as resentful and bitter and unforgiving as your atheist friend who never shows up to these things, okay? Shouldn't it make a difference? I go to church. Great. But you're just as self-centered. You're just as overloaded with debt or overloaded with stuff. You're just as full of anxiety and panic when things are not going well as someone who doesn't have God in their life. It's only logical then that your friend would say, clearly it doesn't really make a difference. If our best way to convince the people that we love to come to faith in Jesus is by living it in front of them, we do need to be careful how we live. And I'm so glad that God is not standing in heaven with a checklist and saying, oh, well, fail, and crossing you off the list when you fall short of his perfect standard. All of us have challenges in our life. All of us have things that we're weak in. All of us need God's ongoing forgiveness in our lives. But come on, you know this. There's a difference between, man, grace has got it, I don't have to worry about it, and saying, as I can, as God empowers me, I'm going to do my best to put his principles into practice. I'm going to do my best to listen to the Holy Spirit's tap on my shoulder and to close my mouth before I say that, or to choose to respect the person who's mean to me. There's a big, big difference. See, the rest of that verse goes like this, okay? He called you out of darkness into his glorious light. And then we see this, dear friends, you're foreigners and strangers on this earth. So I beg you, listen to, okay? I beg you not to surrender to those desires that fight against you, but always let others see you behaving properly. And even though they may still accuse you of doing wrong, then on the day of judgment, they will honor God. They need to see it in your life. And that's not you walking around saying, man, I'm such a bad Christian. He should probably kick me off the team. I don't even know what I'm doing. Some of you are brand new to this idea of faith in Jesus. Some of you, the first time you read through the Bible, you have a lot of these, oh man, I didn't even know that was a thing. Well, I guess I need to try to do that differently, okay? God has immense patience with you. But you've got to make the effort to live his way. Because that's what convinces people not only that God is real, but that his way actually is better. Last thing to write down is this. Don't convince people that Christianity is normal. Convince them that it's healthy. By putting the things that you read, putting the things that you learn, putting the things that you know into practice. Because I believe that when you do it with God's help, when the Holy Spirit comes alongside you and you start to do these things, I think it actually does make a difference. And it will always be countercultural. It will always be weird to people who are living me first. Christianity will always be weird. But you know what else is weird? Staying married and in love. That's weird. Saving for retirement and giving to the poor and still feeling like you have enough, even if you don't make a lot, because you're not chasing consumerism. That's weird. Walking through the most difficult season of your life as you grieve, but grieving with hope because you know that you're going to see that person when God calls your name home to heaven. That's weird. But those are things that happen when I deny myself and I follow Jesus. There are so many ways where a God-honoring life is difficult, but you reap the rewards of God in your life. There's a confidence that I have that even when I'm having a hard time, and even when stuff is broken, and even when someone is sick and they're not getting better, and even when the bills are racking up and I'm not sure how I'm going to pay them, and even when I start to feel like I'm not enough and maybe I'm the wrong whatever for anything, there's a confidence that comes in when I remember God has called me by name. That my name is written in his book of life, that when I die, I get to be with him in heaven, but today I get to be with him because he's in my life. Imagine the difference if your friend found out you are a Christian and they thought, well, isn't that weird that you believe that weird stuff? But then they also recognized, yeah, but man, everybody else I know her age has so much self-confidence trouble, and this girl just seems to have inherent idea of her value. Why do you feel that way? And you could say, well, I feel that way. I know that I'm valuable because I belong to God. And no boyfriend can ever change that. No boss can ever change that. Okay? That's weird and different in a way that's appealing. And people say, okay, whatever that is, how can I get some of that? When somebody sees, when your coworkers see that you got dealt a raw deal, you should have been given the promotion and they gave it to somebody else that clearly wasn't qualified because his cousin's married to that girl or whoever. And everyone knows you have every right to just cut the boss to pieces verbally. And you say, hey, that is what it is. I'm going to keep working hard. What is wrong with you? What is it with this guy? How can you still come into work happy when you had all of this bad? And you say, man, that's because I recognize everything I have comes from God. And my job is an opportunity to serve others, not to serve myself. I don't like it. But you know what? I prayed about it and God's helping me to be patient. That's compelling. That's what makes people say, maybe I should try something different. So don't minimize the gap between God's values and pop culture's values. It's supposed to be there. And I believe that if we put God's ways into practice, we will live healthier lives, spiritually, physically, financially, relationally. And I think that contrast is very compelling to a world that's living in darkness. Finish with these words. Paul wrote this to the church around 50 AD, but it tracks with just as much power and truth if he had written it in 2026. Let's put that up on the screens. Philippians 2:15, he says, in this world you are living among bad people who have turned away from what's good. But you must bring light into this dark place like stars that shine in the night. May your life, those who are baptized today, those who have been serving the Lord faithfully for years, those who have just accepted Jesus this year, may your light shine like stars in a dark world to help people find the way home. May that be you. Hey there, just wanted to take a minute to say thanks for watching. If a friend sent you this link, it's because they believe what we talked about today is going to make a positive impact in your life. And if it did, there's probably somebody that you care about who could benefit from it. So take a minute to share this video with somebody. Post it to your timeline or send them a direct link. And if you're able, take a minute to give using the link at the bottom of the description on this video. One last thing. Maybe you feel a tug at your soul and you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual life and form a relationship with God. We've got folks here who would love to talk with you about it. So just text prayer to the number on your screen and we'll follow up with you. It's also in the description on this video in case that helps. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.